Welcome to Destination Wedding Planning Made Easy, where your team at Destination Weddings Expert talks about all things weddings. Join us as we talk about tips, tricks, and those all too easy pitfalls to avoid when planning your big day. All right. Hello and welcome back to Destination Wedding Planning Made Easy. I am your host, Mario Lopez, and you're here with the team from Destination Weddings Expert. We have Nikki Sanders and Prissi Powell. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. All right. So today we want to talk a little bit about on-site versus off-site venues. I think one of the things that we get to consider when we're looking at where we want to hold and host our wedding is, do we want to do it at the property that we have our room block at, or do we want to do it off-site somewhere that, maybe gives you something a little more specific to what you're looking for? And what are the pros and cons, and what are the challenges, and what are some of the things that you should be considering along the way when you're thinking about on-site versus off-site? So I think one of the most important things, this is a very operational thing. This is something that, I think our couples probably don't think of right away. It's just an assumption that they have. But I think one of the most important things that you want to consider when you're looking at an off-site venue is, who is running that venue? How is it ran? How long has it been around? If it's a brand new venue, first of all, they might not have worked out all the kinks right away, right? There's things that, logistically we just got to figure out along the way. We won't know when we open it until we know, right? But more importantly, when you look at the staff, that's if they're employees versus contracted at some of these properties. There are
Mhm.
some offsite venues that are out there that have employees of that venue. And in my opinion, I think that's probably the better way to go, because we want to make sure that those employees are trained by the venue, are familiar with the venue, are up, understand what the service standard is for that venue. You don't want someone just coming in that works five other venues, because they're contracted and they can go wherever wherever they're needed. But then you don't know, they don't know the service standard of that property. They don't know, the quickest way from point A to point B, and, how to be efficient on the property. So I think that the employees being, or the staff being employees of the property is probably a very important consideration that people don't think about right away, right? The next thing I think consideration wise, what we want to consider is, does it fit your needs and your vision for your ceremony? Prissi, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Couples need to go in understanding like what their vision is, but they also need to look at what the group looks like. Like, do you have a large group? Is it a lot of elderly people? Is it a lot of people who may have mobility issues? Because all of those things should go into whether you have it on site, whether you have it off site, just because all of it plays a part.
Yep, absolutely. I think, that's, you also have to consider the size of your group. A lot of these venues have limited capacity, right?
Hmm.
And so if your group is pushing, let's say the venue only holds 130 people, if your group is pushing that, 60, 65 room block, you might not be able to fit everyone comfortably in the venue. And if you've been out to some of these venues and visit them, even that 130 capacity might feel a little tight, for your group
Hmm.
to actually be there and not be bumping each other when they're pulling their chairs out, and, things like that. Those capacities exist for a reason. And I feel like it's almost a little more restrictive at some of the offsite venues. So, a
It's
larger group.
definitely a big safety thing too. Like, you all the extra people, all the extra vendors, like
Yep.
anything could go wrong. So now it's an even bigger cluster for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, then one of the things that you might want to consider is the needs of your ceremony. If you want to be toes in sand and your venue has toes in sand, great, awesome. But you want to make sure that it has, the vision that you are looking for before you commit to anything. A lot of the times these venues will have, brochures and things like that that you can take a look at that helps visualize it. Sometimes with the offset venues, you might even want to go on a site visit before you commit to anything and make sure that it is what you want it to be, right? So let's kind of talk about now the specifics of on-site versus off-site benefits, things like that. It's once we've decided which way we want to go, what are some of the pros and cons to considering it? I want to start with on-site, because on-site, in my experience and our experience from the groups that we have, the groups that we work with, we probably do more on-site groups than we do off-site, right?
Mm.
Um, and that's because there's a lot of benefits to doing it that way. So one of the biggest things, and kind of I think that one of the most obvious things that's out there for the benefits of doing the on-site is you don't have any transportation needs, right? There's a lot of transportation considerations that need to go into making sure that everyone can get from your hotel where room block is hosted over to the offsite venue if you decide to do offsite. Nikki, talk to us a little bit about some of the considerations for guests when we're talking transportation.
Well, for guests, even if your resort is right next door, it is not running over to your neighbors to borrow something and coming back. You are exiting one secure property and going into another. And if your group has if you have a lot of children in your group, you probably don't want to do an offsite. They can't run back to the room and get the other pair of shoes, or now, little Evan needs to change his shorts, you have them offsite for a long time. When you
Yep.
are on site, you know what? They might be able to stay with the babysitter, and you can feel good about that because you're still on site as well. And
Hmm.
it's not just the children, older people. It's a lot easier for your older guests and nervous travelers. They don't have to, be ready at, 3:30, 4 o'clock to get in a van to go, even just 3 miles away and then wait till your reception is over at whatever time you're comfortable ending to get back.
Yep.
They can dip out when they're ready, and no one has to know or be bothered.
We're
Um,
taking them back.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of considerations with just the logistics of moving your guests from one spot to the other. Um, it's a long day for a lot of people.
I
Yep.
think a lot of times too, we oversimplify moving people. And if you've never been a group leader or been a part of a large group, like having everyone meet at a designated time is the hardest thing to do in the entire world.
Oh my gosh. And
It,
then the
it,
couples
it,
that say, I know my people, we got to tell them 20 minutes
it,
early.
it is a science. So then you tell them 20 minutes early, and then they're still 40 minutes late. And then the person who was on time, it becomes a
Is
thing.
annoyed. Yeah.
And
Yes.
also, like some people, once they are annoyed, there's no coming back, right? You're going to hear about that for the entire ceremony. So just, yeah, in theory, it's very easy to move 40 people. But have you met the 40 people? Like it's not always that simple.
It's
And they're dressed up and hot.
Hmm.
yeah, and that's another thing when you're talking about going, to an offsite and we're right next door is what I hear often when we're looking at resort choices. Yeah, that's true, except your guests are in heels or the guys are wearing dress shoes. If I'm black tie wearing tuck shoes, you won't catch me dead walking across, that's you're not when you're walking next door, it's not like you're walking like directly next door. You're walking through woods, like
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Or
not.
to the gate and then
or to the
around.
gate.
Then you have to check in. It's not. And imagine having a faja on and it's 80 degrees. Mario, do you know what a faja is? It's a
I know
girdle.
what a
But
faja is.
it's a very fancy girdle. But like it's a lot.
Yeah,
Like it could be a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
And the vans, the best ones might be comfortable, but doesn't mean you're going to get the best one. You might get the little, you don't
The first
know.
one.
You don't know.
The first
That guest
van
pick
on
and
the
motion
island.
pick, and yeah, yeah. There's a lot of considerations when it comes to logistics. So you don't have to worry about that with an on-site. You don't have to worry about rounding up the troops. If so and so, Auntie so and so is late for the ceremony, that's on her, but she was close enough that she could have been there. Like that's
Mhm. Mario,
so
I'm not gonna name names though, but you remember we were at an event and they took us to an offsite. And while
Yes.
it was beautiful, It was such a waste, right? You spent probably like 2 hours getting there, another 2 hours getting back. By the time you got into the groove of being at the event, it was time to go. Like it was just like, why do we do this?
It was
Like
exhausting. It was
it
I
was
don't
exhausting.
even
exhausting.
I couldn't even tell you what city we were in when we went to that. That's I would never be able to find it again. But
Hmm.
that's an exact thing. And then we had logistically someone at the end of the night who didn't end up on the bus, and now we have an entire bus of people either being held back or going back trying to
Hmm.
find a person.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it is like wrangling cats. Like it's your guests
Hmm.
are not as organized as you think they are. They're not as well trained as you think they are. It's and especially after a couple cocktails, it gets
Hmm.
more
And a
difficult.
hot day.
A hot day. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
Honestly, they're happy to stay on property. They've,
Hmm.
yeah.
you know, they've spent money on
Yes.
coming to the resort. Um, the convenience of, okay, well, I just go over there. But okay, if I need to go back to my room and get some Advil at some point, I
Hmm.
can't. Like, I
And
Yeah.
can't.
change or cool off or anything. You have that option.
Oh,
And by
sometimes
the
they
way,
do change for the person.
yeah,
Yes.
We've seen that happen
my
Yes.
mom did it. It's
when the party gets going.
yeah.
I'm done with this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's and by the way, as we get into this, guys, that's I know, we're having conversations about it. We are going to play devil's advocate as well. We're going to tell you about why offsites are good and why they should be considered. But these are some of the things that you need to consider when you're looking at doing offsite or onsite. What are the benefits and what are the cons, right? It's so another thing is just when we're talking about like preferred vendors, right? Looking at preferred vendors on-site venues. Those preferred vendors know that property inside and out. They work at that property all the time. They know how to get the good shots. They know, that's hair and makeup knows where they need to be, when they need to be, and where that is on the property, so they're not delaying the process.
Mm.
Preferred vendors on
So
the
you're not
on-site,
melting by the time you make it to that location. Like they know that distance, right?
or they know you will be melting, so they'll double up on the,
Hmm. That little mist.
right? Yeah, so I think, preferred vendors on some of these properties, it just kind of makes it a little bit easier if the vendor that you have knows the property, it's going to make everything run smoother. That can be argued both ways on offsite, onsite. Offsite venues also have vendors that know, some of these properties very well, and make that process easy, but it's something to consider. I do think one of the big benefits to an onsite is going to be the number of venues that you have to choose from, right? It's
Hmm.
so when we're looking at an on-site venue, typically these properties have more than a few venues to look at. And they're looking at more than a few beach choices, more than a few garden or terrace choices, maybe usually only one rooftop, sometimes two, but mostly one. And then, usually a ballroom or something like that. So you have a larger breadth of choices to choose from. Nikki, you made a good point before about backup plans, right? That's
Hmm.
some of these properties, if the rain happens, some of the offsites don't have as many backup plans that, in case something happens. Whereas a onsite is going to usually typically have a ballroom or a restaurant or something that they can put you in, that they will, move around to make it work, in the event of rain or wind or whatever it is. It go back to our weather episode from last week. Like it's
Yeah.
when weather doesn't cooperate, the on-site venues are going to have a lot of options to choose from. Not to mention just when everything's going right, a lot more options and venues that you can choose from for your group and what you're going to be looking at. Now, let's talk negatives for an on-site, right? So the negatives for the on-site, in my experience, and depending on which property you're at, things will be a little bit different. But I think there's a lot more strict rules at an
Hmm.
on-site venue. Most of these on-site properties are going to go one of two ways. Either it's a corporate venue, and those corporate venues have a lot of rules that just come along with it that, has to start at this time. You only have these two times that are available for wedding. And if it's not
Hmm.
those two times, then you can't do it. I have a property that I'm working with right now that's, giving us that nonsense. There's no reason it can't start at 4, but okay. That's
They said so.
Right. Yeah. So some of them have to follow corporate rule, or it's the other side of it where it's not a corporate company, it's a boutique hotel. And now you're looking at, well, we have to do it this way because we only have the staff to be able to do this, or we only have the locations to be able to do this. And so do they always have reasons for it? Yeah, they usually have a reason for why things need to be a certain way. But I think those rules can be bent a little bit more at an offsite venue.
Mhm.
An offsite venue is going to be a little bit more accommodating to, to be able to help you out with, hey, I want to do this, but I want to do it this way. That's right now I have a bride who wants um the cocktail table. She wants it to be bustled's not the right word because it's you're almost using like a rubber band, but it's like brought up a little bit and bunched in some, looks really pretty.
Mhm.
We're doing an on-site wedding with her, and the on-site decor company is saying, oh, we can't really do that unless we charge $100 more per table in order to do it.
Because
That's
they're going to order new tablecloths. They're going
because
to
they're going to
order
order
that.
new tablecloths to do it. Yeah. Whereas an off-site venue, I can almost guarantee you would be like, oh yeah, we'll bust them up. Let's make it look
Yeah.
like this. It is what it is. They're
Yeah.
not going to overcharge for something like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Plus, offsite, you're going to be the only wedding and reception.
Yes.
There might not be three other brides
Yes.
and
Yep.
grooms, or grooms and grooms, or brides and brides that same day,
Next to each other.
and a welcome party, and something else. You're going to be the festivities. So,
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost guaranteed that if you're at an offsite, you're probably the only people that are there. It's your people and whatnot. Now, we'll talk about, the cons to that in a little bit when we talk offsite, but for the most part, you'll be the only people there. It's when you do an onsite, there's a lot of these venues that are like, especially the gardens and the terraces that are right smack dab in the center of the resort. So you got everyone in their rooms, up on their balconies, in their underwear and their swimsuits,
The road.
in their
Looking
robes,
at you.
like watching your wedding. You have all the people walking around. There's people in the pools. And so you have to be very conscious of the venue that you choose in the on-site if you want something that's very private. Because if you
The
want
venue
something that's
privacy.
and the
very,
time.
what's that?
The venue and the time is very important at an on-site.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
Mhm.
4 o'clock pool deck, everybody's like
Oh
this.
my
Mhm.
God. Yelling at
Again,
their kids in the background.
yeah, yeah.
The Speedo guy.
Oh,
Oh, the Speedo guy. There's
not
always
him.
one.
Not him.
I, I was about to quote Gilmore Girls, but I will restrain myself. That's but yes, so there's those things to consider. I won't name the hotel, but there's one of our hotels that we love to work with. But their beach venue, if you turn around, you've got all the drunk people in the pool that's watching
Cheering you
their
on.
ceremony. Yeah, yeah. So it's
Like,
it's
shh.
something to consider because yeah,
Shut up.
right?
You have to walk by there to get a towel.
Hmm.
I had to
Yeah,
go. It was annoying.
yeah. I know. So these are the things that you want to consider, and that's why sometimes a site visit, whether it's offsite or onsite, is a good idea because then you can go on and take a look and see how all that operationally works. Because yes, the photos will always look great. Any marketing photos that you're going to see out there, of course, are not going to show any people in the background. They're all photoshopped out, or it was done at 7 o'clock in the morning when no one was actually in there.
First light. They do
Mhm.
those at first light.
Mhm. Yeah. So that is something to consider and something that really is going to help influence your decision. Also, on-site venues, and I think this is probably one of the largest ones for me because when I'm speaking to our couples about their budget and how they want to manage things and what they're trying to do, no one wants to overpay for anything. Whether you've got a $15,000 budget or you've got a $100,000 budget, you don't want to overpay for anything. That's and on outside vendor fees and on-site venues are really getting out of control. Um,
Yes.
yeah, and they're about to get worse, by the way. The
Oh,
taxes just went up in DR, and so
oh
that's
God.
those fees are going to go up again. But I think you need to be considerate of what those outside vendor fees are going to be, especially if you know that you are very particular about your photography and your videography or your hair and makeup. Two things that I think are very personal. It's any decor team, I think, is going to be able to execute a decor vision. Most floral teams are going to be able to execute floral. Food, you don't really have a choice. It has to be the on-site food
Mhm.
because for liability purposes. But when it comes to hair and makeup and photo and video, those are two of the most common ones. And some of these fees,
Ridiculous.
$1,500, $2,000 for outside vendor fees. Part of it is the hotel charging a fee. Part of it is the local government making it hard for them to bring on outside vendors. And so they have to build these fees into their fees and their structure. So it's these on-site venues are charging a lot higher fees, and it makes the budget hard to stick to if you are going to be specific about your hair and makeup and your photo and video, which, to be honest, 95% of my couples are. They're very particular about, who's going to be handling their hair or handling their photos. So definitely something to consider with on-sites. Is there anything on-site that we want to touch base on before we kind of move over to our off-site venues and pros and cons there?
Well, sometimes, you're with your contract and your wedding contract, you get more back when you have an on-site wedding
Okay.
versus an off-site wedding.
That is a
Consent.
really good point, Nikki.
You
Mhm.
get your concessions. You might get your free room nights up on the back end. You get the welcome party. Offsite, they're like, yeah.
We'll give you a little something. That's yeah. That is a
Congratulations.
yeah.
Mhm. Thank
That's a
you.
super
Bye.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a super valid point because that's when we sign these room block contracts, it is a different contract that we're signing. If you have an on-site wedding, we have different terms that we get versus, what they consider a social group. You're basically just a social group. Yes, that's we know you're hosting your wedding there. They actually know that, you're hosting your wedding, as a wedding group, but it's just a social group as far as their operations team is concerned. And so that's when it comes to that, your terms are different, your event, comps are different. That's super valid point, Nikki.
Mhm. I think it's also easier, like, to keep your group together in those on sites. Like, when you do an off-site, people are like, well, we can stay anywhere, we can do anything, which again impacts those contracts, impacts those concessions.
Yep, yeah,
Yes.
that too, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more, Prissy. But you're right when you're looking at your comps and the money that you're getting back afterwards, which not that you want to be counting on those funds because the group can go any way, right? But it is a
Hmm.
benefit if your entire group stays within the room block and you get these comps. It's a huge help, and it helps with the budget and it helps overall. So is definitely something that you want to consider. So I guess on that same note, then let's talk about offsite venues because we have a lot of groups that do offsite venues. We enjoy working with our offsite vendors. From the planning side of things, it makes my job a hell of a lot easier. That's because any offsite venue is going to automatically have a coordinator that's going to actually not even want me involved. I will take care of it. I'll do
Excellent
it. Yeah,
coordinators.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about those offsite venues. One of the biggest benefits, I think, in my experience, might not be everyone's experience, but I do this on a pretty regular basis, is going to be the budget for an offsite venue. Typically, those offsite venues, first of all, that budget's going to be lower anyways. It's not going to cost quite as much, right? But then also they have a little bit more flexibility in there, right? A lot of the times the offsite venues, it's their decor that they're using.
Already have it.
So yeah, so they're bringing in, their linens, their silverware, it's their chairs, things like that. When they do stuff like that, they have more flexibility in what they can charge, right? So hey, it's your total budget on your group of this size is $25,000. Oh, but I can only spend 20,000. Okay, well we can adjust this and make it work, right? Whereas when we're working with an on-site venue, when they're talking about chairs and silverware and tables and linens and things like that, it's still a technically another company that's coming in and doing it for them, right? That's some
Mhm.
of these corporate companies that we work with, they have one company that works for all of them in the area. That's because they have that contract, right? And so it's not as easy for them to negotiate prices or to adjust pricing or whatnot. It might have better packages on the front end for the wedding package, but for them to be able to adjust it and make it work within your budget, I feel like it's easier to stick to a budget at an offsite venue, especially if you're working with a limited budget that it can only go so far. You're probably going to have a
Mhm.
easier time negotiating those things at an offsite. Um, the venue privatization, right? So this is a double-edged sword. It's, because the property itself, usually, like we mentioned before, when you're hosting your group at an offsite venue, typically your group is the only one there. Your people are the only one walking, only ones walking around. Your group is the only ones that are using the facilities, the bathrooms, things like that. And so that piece of it is more private. You do have to make sure that you ask about, like, if you're doing it on a beach. If you're doing it on a beach in DR, guess what? That beach is still public, right?
Yeah.
So
Mexico too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's typically that beach is still going to be public. So even though it is private for your group, you might have people in your pictures that need to be, photoshopped out or taken out. People like,
Cigar guy standing out there.
right? Yeah,
The
yeah.
hat guy with the pile of hats.
Jet ski guy out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and not to mention, that's some of the venues, yeah, you might have, this beautiful beach and beautiful water, but there's also a whole bunch of boats that are docked out there that, that's if you like the look, great, awesome. But just so might be a possibility. It's so that privatization, outside vendors. Now, again, this kind of goes back to our budget conversation, right? Yes, the budget is going to be a little bit easier to manage at these venues, but that also means outside vendors are usually typically more welcome at the outside venues. And when they are, or even if there is an outside vendor fee, because sometimes the government is involved and things need to be charged, that fee isn't nearly as high.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're trying to stick to a budget, when we're really trying to hit a specific number, it's going to be easier for an offsite venue to say, oh, well, we can charge less on that and make sure that, it works within the budget. Just as long as they're covering their fees and the expenses that they get charged, it doesn't necessarily need to be as much of an issue there. It's also when we're talking about, I've typically not been naming names on this one, right? But I will name this one. When you're talking about an on-site venue such as Casa de Campo, they specifically want you to use their on-site venue vendors, not only because of expenses and things like that, but also you need to know that property inside and out. If you don't know that property and you're taking, you're the photographer and you're there, you're wasting time moving the group around trying to figure it out. You're wasting
It'll
time
ruin
trying
the
to find
timeline.
the right angles. And an on-site vendor is going to know those angles better and be more efficient at it, right? So
Absolutely.
super super important to when you're considering those things. When you're at an offsite venue, there's typically less of that angle game that you need to be working at, because again, there's less venues, there's less square footage. It's if you've been there, it.
Mm-hmm.
um Decor choices. It's so again, I think our offsite partners, I don't know if it's if you guys have experienced this as much, but our offsite partners, I think, have more flexibility with their decor choices. And that goes back to our point from before with offsite vendors. If they need to bring in another decor company to do something, they usually have another decor company that can handle it. Some of these larger corporate on-site ones, they have this decor company, this is who we're going to work with. And if you want to use someone else, it's this insane vendor fee to do it. You know, that's if you have a very specific vision in mind, I think the offsite venue gives you a little bit more flexibility in those situations, right? If you're
They do for like if you want those specialty things, like I want a churro cart.
yes,
Not everyone gets to let the churro cart in the gate. If
yep,
you want a certain musician or band, they're not always allowed on site on some resorts.
yep.
Um, Sometimes, but there's little specific things that are your vision that may not fit at the resort you want to stay at.
I think one of the most important things is when you're speaking to your destination weddings expert and you're talking to them about where you want to host your wedding and we're looking at options. One of the most important things are those non-negotiables that you just talked about, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
If you absolutely want a churro cart or you absolutely want a drone or any of those things that I don't care
Beer
what
pong.
beer donkey. I want my damn beer donkey. It's for those of you that haven't heard the story, I had a beer donkey at my wedding. It was in Riviera Maya at El Dorado Casitas. It was amazing and such a huge hit. I've been trying to get that beer donkey at another wedding, and it's just not happening. No one will allow it. It's driving me crazy.
They won't allow it. They can't. They can't have
It's,
livestock.
yeah,
Some
right.
places.
Yep. But
Facts.
an offsite venue is going to have an easier time with things like that,
Yeah.
right? It's, not now that you said livestock, Nikki, that's something too. If you need a horse at your wedding, if you need an elephant at your wedding, if you need a donkey at your wedding, there's a lot of those offsite venues are going to be less restrictive about it because we're only dealing with your group there from a liability perspective. We're not dealing with all the other guests that are on the property and you know what that looks like, right?
They might be allergic to donkeys.
This might be allergic to donkeys.
An elephant.
I
But I
gotta
think
share that. I gotta find a digital copy of that donkey picture because it was amazing.
But I think these are good points to share with your coordinator or early on, right? Just so everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what we're looking for, we know the questions to ask, whether it's on site, whether it's off site. You don't want to get in the fourth inning and then it's like, oh yeah, I want a donkey. Like,
Right, right.
wait, like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the key there, Prissy, is early on. It's the
mhm.
earlier that you mention that to us, the better choices that we can make when we're making recommendations on, which venue to send you to. We have
Well,
worked
and
with, oh, go ahead.
the liquor, a lot of
Oh,
people absolutely want a certain amount. Like, I want these liquors, I want these beers. Some resorts don't have it.
yeah.
Mhm.
They don't have it. So
Mhm.
if these are things that are in your mind for your vision,
Mhm.
Mhm.
share them right away.
It's We actually have a super cool couple that we're working with right now that did come to us very early with we want a churro cart and we want to make sure that there's Aperol on property. And luckily that's the venue that we chose for them had we knew already knew it had Aperol because I drink a spritz there every time I'm there. That's and then we knew we were able to get the churro cart because we knew to ask about that before we even confirmed anything. Because I had that information, I was able to put them at a property that I knew would be able to accommodate. And there were definitely properties that I would have recommended if they didn't want those things that wouldn't have worked out. It wouldn't have
Mhm.
ended up being, a good fit. So it's I think that was great on their part that they came to us early on and asked us about these things. And now we can work on negotiating the details, but we know it can get done.
Mhm.
Right? Okay, so now that actually we've talked about decor and whatnot, but let's talk a little bit about entertainment. It's now any property that we're going to put you at is going to have entertainment options. Usually it's some some sort of hora loca. That's it's the Dominican dance, the white party, or the robot, the tequila robot, or the water drums, or there's a ton of different options out there. But if you have something very specific in mind, we had one couple that was looking for, they wanted a traditional Mayan ceremony in their, as part of their entertainment for the evening. Someone to come in and do a Mayan blessing in the middle of it. That's awesome. It's fantastic. Not every property is going to be able to accommodate that, and they might be able to, but they're going to charge you an outside vendor fee.
Mhm.
Whereas an offsite venue typically is going to be a little bit more open to allowing those vendors on site with little or no outside vendor fee, and making sure that they can accommodate for it, right? That's so especially if you have something unique in mind, something that is going to be different than the norm, different than some of the things that you see on TikTok and the Instagram. Like you might want to consider asking about that very early on, so that you're able to make sure that we put you at a place that can accommodate that. Right. Now, there are some negatives to offsites. I feel like we've talked about a lot of these already, but let's just kind of cover them since we're talking about the negatives, right? Prissy, you had mentioned before about keeping the group staying together. Talk to
Mhm.
us a little bit about the logistics of the group staying together and why we want them all at the same place.
Especially for offsite, it's easier if your transportation company only has to stop at one hotel, right? If the group is between 2 to 3 hotels, that is building more time into moving guests from the hotel to the venue. It's easier to pick up people from one location, take them to another.
Mhm.
But because the wedding is offsite, the guests know they are not required to stay at Hotel A. So you're gonna have a lot of chatter in the group chat just because Auntie Linda found this cute little Casa de whatever. She's
Mhm.
staying here. $32 cheaper than where you want your group to stay. And so now it's like it's all of this chatter. And you're gonna have people doing all sorts of things. So
And
definitely
the people
easier
that do those all sorts of things
for
don't have
$32.
for $32, they don't have necessarily have their own travel advisors. So they're going to be contacting the couple. How do I get from here to there? What
Yeah,
do I do? I can't get in my Airbnb now.
Mhm.
So who's going to help them?
right,
And
right,
then where are you, right? Like, the roads in some of these countries, they're not all paved. They're not all, large buses can't get down. Some of them, small vehicles can't even get down. So it
right.
just creates a lot more time that you need within your day to get
Mhm.
people from point A to point B. Also, you kind of want the group to stay together. You want the groom, each side of the family to be able to connect and make new friends and learn each other. Very hard to do when we are scattered across the country.
Yeah,
Also, what city are these people in? Punta Cana is vast, right? Everything is not next door. So that's something you need to consider if we're going on-site, off-site. Like, where are people going to be?
right. Absolutely, absolutely. It's it. My biggest thing with people staying elsewhere is just the cost, the logistics.
Mm-hmm.
It's if they want to be at the welcome event, guess what? Now you're paying a day pass. That's
Mm-hmm.
if you can even get a day pass. You might not even be able to come to the event.
Yeah.
It's anything that they want to be involved in, it's going to cost extra money. Them getting to your venue, them getting from the airport, them, all these things that they didn't think of because they were trying to save that $32. And when you said that, I died because we've had people make that
It's
decision over
literally
$32.
$32.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think too, just transportation between different places can be expensive. I took a
Mhm.
$100 taxi when we were in the DR because
Yeah.
I wanted to go check out a venue because my client wanted Hennessy. I'm like, I don't know, but I paid $100 to go from one resort to another resort one way. So your guests may have to pay those costs as well, right? So that $32 ends up being what, 68 or something? Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It can end up being a lot more. It can
yes.
be end up being a lot more overall. And I think, when everyone stays on site for a wedding, it's a shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's sharing the experience. It's you've brought everybody away from home. Um, and they just get more time to relax and enjoy and meet new people instead of going, okay, I got to be here. We got to go there. We got to go here and go here. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it depends on know your group.
Yeah.
Know
No,
your
you're
group.
good.
That's what it comes down to. That's the perfect way to say it, Nikki, is you put all this effort into bringing everyone into one spot. You wanted everyone to be together. We wanted, the reason to do a destination wedding is because you don't want one day of just people coming in because they feel like they have to go at a wedding. You want them to come down and enjoy their family vacation and spend some time together and get to know the in-laws. And, that's it's a great bonding experience. And for the guests that push so hard because they want to save their $32 and stay at another property, it they're missing the point. They're not understanding why we did a destination wedding. And that hopefully gets to be a learning experience for them.
Mm,
But it is what it is. It's um, our offsites, I think there's some amazing options out there. I think there's a lot of offsites that do a phenomenal job. Some of the coordinators that we work with at the offsites are just fantastic and so efficient at their jobs. There's also a lot of benefits to doing an onsite. And so I think we wanted to get on today and just kind of talk about the pros and the cons and talk about what that looks like because there's things that need to be considered that maybe as, a couple with fresh eyes that are looking at it as, I just love this venue and the way it looks. Okay, let's talk about the other things that you need to consider other than, the venue working for you that
mm,
helps to make everything run smooth day of and it helps to make it a good experience for everyone and hopefully helps to save you a little bit of money.
mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Ladies, anything else you want to cover while we're talking about on-site and off-site?
Nope.
No. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you got something out of it, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Want to learn more or ready to schedule your complimentary consultation? Follow us on Instagram at Destination Weddings Expert or visit our website at destinationweddingsexpert.com.